we present Beowulf, an original adaptation, written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Part 1. Scarlet Stains. He ran. He did not want to. Oh, how he did not want to. Everything inside him roared in protest, and yet he ran, feeling as though his soul was trying to tear itself free, feeling as though every step was a betrayal of everything he stood for. But still he ran. The shouts were not behind him yet, but he knew they were coming. Hurtling across the wheat fields, careless of the crops he crushed, he fixed his eyes upon the distant speck that was his home and pushed himself to a sprint. His breath was thundering in and out, in and out. The only thing he could hear besides his feet thudding across the earth was the susurration of shivering wheat as it bowed and broke before him. His lungs were burning now, his legs screaming in protest. But the silver-dark straw of the thatched roof was in his eyeline, and he would not stop now. From behind, a cry went up, a lone, wailing howl in the night. Then another and another. A baying chorus rose into the crisp evening air, and he knew the chase was on. The Wulfings were coming. Barreling through the door of his home, the sudden gloom stunned his eyes and he called out into the darkness, "Birgitta!" His voice broke as his lungs demanded air, so he gasped in breath and barked the name again. "Birgitta, we must go!" A shape moved in the shadows, but it was not her, not Birgitta. "Boy," he barked, "where is your mother?" "Will you not answer me, boy? Where is your mother?" But the boy would not answer, only stared at him wide-eyed, his mouth agape. "Where is your mother, boy?" He tried again. "Birgitta!" At last she came. "What is this? Not... Oh," she breathed, her eyes open wide like her son's. "What have you done?" "There is no time, Birgitta. We must go." He surged towards her, his hands outstretched, and grasped her by the shoulders. "They are coming." Her green eyes met his, and once more he said it, imploring her to understand. "They are coming." She nodded, those eyes snapping into sharp focus. "They are coming," she repeated. "So we are leaving." She looked down at the child, still gaping up at him. "Fetch your bag, my heart. Bring your best knife, the one your father gave you, and your bow and as many clothes as you can carry. Go, now." Obediently, the boy turned and scurried into the shadows. Birgitta nodded once again and turned to go herself, pulling her long dark hair up behind her head and tying it with a cord. It was only when she pulled away that he noticed the blood. Where his hands had touched her shoulders, 2 scarlet stains now smeared her dress. He looked at his hands and for the first time saw that they were covered in crimson. Gore stained him up to his elbows. It did not seem to be his own. As he looked down, he saw his chest and stomach were coated as well. No wonder the boy had stared in shock. No wonder she had too. His ears were pulsing as his own blood coursed through him. He heard it surging like the sea against cliffs. Spots danced in his vision, and suddenly the room, his home, felt too small, too dark. He staggered outside again, heaving in air. His red-stained hands gripped his knees as he bowed his head and sucked in air, and his memory presented him with fractured visions of what he had done. He had not meant to fight, of that he was quite certain. Only a fool would fight so many when he stood alone. So perhaps he was a fool. He was always a fool for a fight. His mind stayed so clear as he made his way to the battlefield. He'd always found that strange. Other men would panic or vomit or jabber away, but his mind was always calm and clear like a spring morning. But then the battle horn would sound, and a mist descended on that sunny spring day, and he would know no more. Battle fever, he'd heard it called, red mist, bloodlust. Hathlaf, that was the man's name, the man whose blood now covered him so liberally. Halflaf of the Wolfings. He could not remember what the man had done this time, but he knew that for Halflaf and him it had only been a matter of time before they came to blows. Ironically, that had been what had sent him to the man's home in search of peace. A howling cry pierced his thoughts and he looked up sharply. Smoke stained the horizon. There would be no peace. The Wolfings were coming for vengeance, and they were burning his fields as they came. "Birgitta!" "I'm here," his wife interrupted, "and we must go." She thrust a heavy bag into his arms and he saw that a second one was by her side. "How did you—" he began to ask, but she gave a wry smile. "You think I have not been planning for this?" she asked, as she passed him out his belt, his sword and his hunting knife. "You have been feuding and fighting since boyhood, but peace is something new to you. You will forgive me if I did not think you would find it a natural fit." She leaned back into the house and called out, "Come now, my heart!" The boy stepped out, still wide-eyed and scared. In one hand he clutched a well-filled bag, in the other was his bow. At his waist was his good knife, the one his father had given him. "Good boy," his mother soothed, swinging a cloak around his shoulders and bending down to fasten it. "Now, we must hurry to the boat, and you must stick by my side the whole way and promise you shan't look back. Can you do that?" He nodded, and she kissed his head gently. She straightened and pulled a cloak around her own shoulders. Once more she nodded, and the three of them hurried away down the path that would lead them to the river's edge. The smell of smoke was in the air now as the fire grew close, and the baying chorus of the Wolfings rose up once again. As they hurried along, he saw the boy stealing glances up at him, clearly afraid, though he did not know if it was him the boy feared or their pursuers. Bending down, he swept the child up into his arms and they increased their pace to a run, making for the mooring their family had used for longer than anyone could remember. As they rounded a final corner, the old familiar jetty came into view, the boat bobbing gently by its side. Birgitta dashed forward, ripping back the canvas, and jumped inside. He placed the boy gently into her arms and set about unfastening the ropes. Pushing with all his might, he shoved the boat out into the shallows, wading after and leaping in smoothly. Taking up the oars, he steered the boat skillfully into the river current and let it take them swiftly downstream. "Echtiao!" came a voice in the wind, and his head snapped up at the sound of his name. Looking back towards his home, he saw men gathered there, silhouetted by the flames they had wrought with their rampage and destruction. "Echtiao!" came the voice again. "There's nowhere you can run to be safe from us." The figure held high a burning torch and thrust it deep into the silver dark thatch of Echtiau's home. Once again the baying chorus of the Wolfings howled out into the air, and he watched, helpless, as his home succumbed to the flames. "Echtiau," came a voice, a very different one this time, filled with kindness and concern. He looked to Birgitta and saw her glance meaningfully towards the boy sitting beside her in the boat. He too was staring back at the burning of his home, tears streaming in his eyes. "Say something," Birgitta whispered at him. "Your son needs to hear the wisdom of a warrior." Echtiau froze for a moment, not sure that this warrior had any wisdom to offer. But then he thought of his own father, how when he had been a boy his father had seemed to hold all the wisdom in the world, and he sought within himself for something he could offer his son in turn. "Beowulf," he called to the boy, but the boy's eyes would not leave the flames on the shore. "Beowulf," he tried again, and slowly the boy's head turned. "Does the fire scare you?" The boy nodded. "Good," Echtiau went on. "That is good. Fire can bring pain and destruction and even death," the boy nodded. "But if we tame it, it can also bring warmth and joy and life. That is what it is to be a warrior, Beowulf. To know that there is that within us that can destroy, but to know that there is also that within us that brings life." The boy stared up at him earnestly, the fear in his face beginning to fade. "You are becoming big now, almost a man yourself. Do you think you are ready to begin learning that?" Again, the boy nodded, and in a small voice he finally answered, "I think so." Echtiau breathed a sigh of relief, grateful that somehow he'd found something that might pass as comforting wisdom, at least to a child. He bent to continue rowing when the boy's voice piped up again. "So, you have fire within you, but it's tame?" he asked, and Ejdiaw's hand slipped on an oar. An unwelcome memory of his battle-fevered killing of Haflaf flashed across his mind, and his shoulders sagged. "No, my son," he answered in a moment of honesty. "I have never been able to tame that fire, not all the time." "Then how—" the boy began, but Ejdiaw cut him off. "Because every day is a chance to become a man who is a little better than the day before." He looked the boy in the eyes once again, and saw a pure and glowing trust that stirred him to say more. "And you, my brave Beowulf, you will grow to be a better man than I could ever hope to be. This I swear." And he picked up the oars and set his shoulder to the stroke, guiding his family downstream to the safety of the sea. Thanks for listening. Beowulf was a Settle Stories commission written and read for you by Jon Buckeridge. Story editor was Miriam Sarin. Intro music was Warrior by Hartzman. Outro music was Travel in the Ocean by Monument Music. It was a Parable Arts production.